Alright guys, I'm headed home from Smith Lake, Jasper, Alabama, wrapping up stop number 3 of the Bassmaster Southern Opens. It was my first season out. I really enjoyed it. I think I did pretty well. I started out the season on the Harris chain, which is pretty much home waters for me. Grew up fishing that lake a lot as a kid. My grandma lived on it. I think I owned 3 boats fishing on that lake before I was even old enough to get my driver's license. So finished 16th there. Met some cool people. My buddy John Pollard, I got paired up with him day 1. Pretty much stayed close with him throughout the entire season. He helped me out a lot. He ended up finishing 2nd in that tournament. It was a really good tournament for him. But, you know, on from the Harris chain, I went up to Lake Chickamauga in Dayton, Tennessee. I was really excited about that one because I knew the fish were spawning. And I thought, man, I could have a pretty good tournament up there. And it was the exact opposite. I think day 1 of that tournament, I caught 1 fish. And day 2 was really awesome, though. I got paired up with JT Kenny, which he's a pro over on the FLW side. I'm sure you know that, but, you know, just a super cool guy. First, like, full-time fishing pro I got paired up with and got to fish with. So, you know, got to ask him a lot of questions. Caught a lot of fish that day, and I was sitting in like 197th place after day 1 with 1 fish, and made the climb up to 93rd is where I finished in that tournament, which really disappointing, but it's fishing. It's just how it goes. And now I just finished up stop number 3 on Smith Lake. So Smith Lake is a very humbling experience for me. I fish a lot. You know, I live on the Kissimmee chain. I live on Lake Tahoe. I can go out there and catch 5 fish just about anytime I want, and no big deal. And I got up there on Sunday at about 1 o'clock, and I fished with Neil Davis, a good buddy of mine, and he's fishing over on the boater side. And we fished Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, 4 days. And we put in probably 8 to 10 hours a day on the water. And I think between the 2 of us, we boated like 2 keepers. I mean, it was just absolutely brutal. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, man, I know I'm a better fisherman than this. I know Neil's a better fisherman than this. Why the heck aren't we catching them? And, you know, we're staying in a house with a couple other guys. We had Rich Howes, John Brazel, and our buddy Larry. And, you know, we're coming home every night and sitting around barbecuing, drinking beer, and they're just telling us, like, man, it's awesome out there. We're just whacking them. And I'm like, are we fishing the same lake? Well, tournament day rolls around. I draw out Matt Lee from the Elite Series. I mean, how cool is that? That's worth the entry fee alone just to be able to fish with one of the Elite Series guys. So I'm thinking, all right, we got an Elite Series guy here. He's gonna be on fish. We're gonna crush him. And you know, I get in the boat with him, get all organized. I said, all right, man, what's the plan? He's like, man, I have no idea. I did not pre-fish for this. I'm like, what? You're an Elite Series guy. You don't even really know what you're gonna do. He's like, man, you know, I fish the Elite Series. I don't really fish the Open Series. I'm here mostly for my sponsors. And, you know, for everyone watching that doesn't understand how Bassmaster works, you fish the Open Series strictly so that way you can make the Bassmaster Classic, or you can qualify for the Elite Series. The Elite Series is the pinnacle of bass fishing. You don't get any better group of guys or higher in the scales. I mean, it's the NFL of football. So, you know, here I am fishing with this guy that's like, you know, one of the Tom Brady's of fishing, and he doesn't have a clue what we're gonna go and do. And I'm like, oh man, okay, well, he'll figure it out quickly. We fish and we fish and we fish, and all morning long we're not getting a bite. And I'm like, man, this is just exactly what happened to me in practice. And I'm going crazy thinking about it. And you know, I had a bait in my bag that one of the other guys gave me, and he's like, man, if you really get in trouble, try this out. And it was Larry gave it to me, and I'm like, all right, well, what is it? It ended up being a little itty bitty crappie jig. Now, these spotted bass that we're fishing for up here, I'd never fished for a spotted bass before, and you know, they were feeding on really, really tiny shad. So it made sense to throw this rooster tail is what it was. So I tie that thing on there, throw it out there, and you know, Smith Lake's like 150 foot deep, and these fish were like hanging around like 40 or 50 feet below the surface. And throw it out there, and boom, I catch one. And I'm like, all right. And it was a keeper. I'm like, great, I'm on the board. I'm so happy at that point. I got one fish. At least I get to walk across the stage and weigh in. Well, next cast I throw out there, boom, I get a second one, and I'm like, holy cow. And I'm like looking at this bait thinking like, what in the heck did, you know, Larry do to this thing to help me catch fish? And I was just so grateful. And you know, Matt Lee's standing on the front of the boat, and you know, I'm looking at him, and he's like, man, I don't know what that is, but I sure hope you have another one. And I actually did. I had one in my bag, and it was just a fluke that I had another one in there. So I gave it to him, and you know, by that point I think he had like one keeper fish in the boat. So he throws it out there, and he ends up catching two more. And so I had a 3 fish limit, and he didn't have his limit. You know, when you're fishing over in the division that he was fishing out of, it's a 5 fish limit, and you know, I was on the 3 fish side. So he ended up weighing in 3 fish. I ended up weighing in 3 fish. That was day one. I'm like, all right, well, you know what? I just, you know, stayed neck and neck with an Elite Series pro, fishing off the back of his boat, you know, covering water he already covered. So I was pretty happy with that. And I think after day one, I ended up in like 16th. Now, there's 200 people that I'm competing against. So 16th, I was like, all right, great. You know, this is the Harris chain all over again. Wonderful, you know. And really, I don't do it for the money. I do it for the competition. I just enjoy the healthy competition. So, you know, I'm sitting in 16th place. I get back to the house, and, you know, I get a text message from Bass, and they're like, your day 2 pairing is out. So I look it up, and it happened to be the guy who was sitting in 3rd place after day 1, and he had like 13 pounds. I'm like, man, this guy is just stroking them. This is awesome. He is on fish. I'm going to go out tomorrow. I'm going to catch 3 fish. I'm going to hopefully get some big ones, and I'm going to make the top 12 cut for the final day. So I meet up with him, and, you know, I could say a lot about day 2, but I'm just not going to. Did not turn out the way that I thought it would. He drove his boat a long, long ways to try and catch fish that had disappeared and weren't there, and he ended up zeroing on day 2. He did not catch a single fish. I was able to put a small bag together behind him. I caught 2 fish behind him, and I just couldn't get that 3rd one in the boat, man. If I had got that 3rd one in the boat, I would not be driving home right now. I would be out on the lake fishing day 3. So I put 2 fish in the boat. One of them died. I hooked it in the tongue. There's just not much you can do about that. The other one died. Live well issues, or whatever you want to call it. But you know, I ended up taking a half-pound penalty, which is 8 ounces, and I missed the cut by 10 ounces. So, you know, regardless of whether or not I took the penalty, I was still 2 ounces out of making the cut. So yeah, it sucked. It wasn't ideal for me. Ended up finishing 17th in this tournament. Just, you know, when I set out this year, I told my wife, you know, as I was discussing with her fishing, you know, the pro series and fishing as a, you know, professional bass fisherman for a season, you know, I said, you know, I've never done this before. I've competed a lot on local levels, you know, I'm pretty good at it, but I'm pretty good at the stuff that I know, and I want to do this strictly to just check and see, you know, how good are you? You don't know how good you are until you compete against the best people in the world. And I told her, I said, you know, if I get one, you know, top 25 finish, I think I'll be okay with that. Well, you know, I finished, you know, in the top 8% on Harris, and, you know, here I am in the top 9 or 10% on Smith Lake, which was the hardest lake ever. So, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'm going to fish this again next year. They kind of changed the series a little bit. You know, they've got one stop way up on Lake Champlain in New York. I'm not too crazy about driving all the way to New York to go and catch some fish, but, you know, we'll see. The main benefit is stop number 1 is on Lake Toho, baby. Kissimmee, in my backyard. So if I decide to do it and get in on that, you guys watch out, because I'm going to lay the hammer down on those fish. Be really exciting. I'm already excited about it. I don't even know if I'm going to fish it or not, but I definitely qualified to fish again next year. There's no doubt about that. We'll wait and see. Hopefully at the end of the day today, they'll have the national rankings out. I'm guessing, I'm hoping that I finish somewhere in the top 25. Top 25 is where you want to be. Helps you out for the next season quite a bit. But, you know, hopefully I had 2 top 20 finishes, you know, 16th, the 17th, the 93rd. So I guess we'll just see how everyone else did. You know, bass fishing is one of those sports where you just wish everyone could win, but, you know, you want for yourself to win a little bit more. So, but I appreciate all the love and support you guys have shown me over the season. You know, anybody from, you know, my aunt and uncle, Bill and Nanette, you know, making me jerseys and sending them to me, from, you know, branded printing, to my wife, my mom, every time I leave town, she comes down from Tennessee and stays with my wife to help take care of my kids. You know, my kids, definitely thank you guys. You know, if you weren't as well behaved as you are, then I don't think mommy would be willing to let me go. You know, my dad, from buying me my first fishing pole, you know, especially my nanny, she has always supported me in all my fishing adventures. From helping me to buy my first boat, to helping me buy my second boat and my third boat. You know, I was like 14 back then, to owning her house on the lake on the Harris chain, where I did really well. You know, she's probably the number one that I have to thank for it. Without her support when I was a kid, I probably never would have been super involved in bass fishing or loved it as much as I do. So I guess we'll see you guys, but stay tuned. Hopefully I'll be able to pick up some more sponsorship deals. You know, I don't really know exactly what the future holds, but I'll keep you posted. Thanks, guys.